Hello everyone, welcome back. I want to start a new series starting out with this episode called Back to the Basics, and the goal of this is for players to be able to explain and improve concepts that we've taken for granted after playing the game for many years. Today, we will be talking about different methods of managing dots or damage over time abilities, and how to manage externals to get the most damage out of them possible. Hope you enjoy. Alright everyone, let's get straight into it. When we talk about tracking multiple dots, the thing that I'm referring to is, say you have 3 targets. Let's say we're looking at Mimiron, for example. Mimiron 4th phase has the head, the body, and the bottom. How do you manage dots in all of those? I think most of you, or some of you, probably have a UI that looks like this, where you don't really have nameplates or anything, and you're putting corruption on multiple targets, and the way you're looking at things involves tabbing between the targets or clicking between the targets. So it's very hard to see the dot timers ticking down. You see this one's at 3, but what's the timer on this one? Oh, it's 5. And we need to make this clear so we're able to manage multiple dots, not just one, between Agony, UA, Corruption, and Haunt, and track our Shadow ISB debuff. And there's a lot easier ways to clean this up, and I'm going to jump straight into that. So the first method I want to talk about is improving your nameplates. There are a large variety of nameplate add-ons, and I used to use KUI nameplates, but recently KUI didn't work well with the new update, so I swapped to Plater, and Plater really makes things extremely easy to see. And personally, this is the way that I manage my dots before I get into other options. So if you look at the nameplates over here, I'm going to put up UA and Corruption on all 3 targets. And as you can see, since I can see right over, I can see exactly how long I have left on each shot. Corruption's getting low. Hit a Shadow Bolt. I could swap and hit a Shadow Bolt. Swap and hit a Shadow Bolt. UA is about to fall off. Swap and hit a Shadow Bolt. UA is falling off the second target. And you can see it's a lot easier to manage all my dots on multiple targets when you're just Shadow Bolting. You can use a Drain Life to get a quick little tick there. But it's very easy to see all 3. There's no tried and true just easy method like dot now, read dot now, read dot now. You have to be able to track the timers on all 3. And in this method using nameplates, you could kind of see all 3 all together at the same time. And that's the first method of being able to manage multiple dots. Another popular method is when there's only 2 targets. Say, for example, you have Steelbreaker you're trying to roll a large corruption on, or you're another class trying to roll dots moving to the final phase, and you're still hitting the Grandmaster. What you could do is you could set the target as a focus. There are macros to set focus, which I will leave in the description. Target the other target, and you have a focus corruption, focus Shadow Bolt, focus Drain Life, whatever, and you can manage your dots by seeing both of the target frames very easily here, because sometimes your nameplates will be too high in the sky, like for Mimiron and for Steelbreaker. So that makes that management extremely easy, and you can just keep an eye right next to the target, the main target, and the focus target. Keep that corruption up, keep it rolling, and be able to do big damage on fights you normally would have to just tab target in between because the target's too big. The third method, which I tried, but I'm personally used to just using nameplates, and I probably am not going to do this unless I spend a lot of time on it and it becomes a custom, is using a Weakaura to track all 3 nameplates right in front of you and all the dots that you have. Like this one created by Jeyp from the Warlock Discord, Jeyp's Bros Frames. This has become a very popular download recently, and I know a lot of Warlocks that are using it, and I think other classes can use this as well, obviously, Fire Mage, Shadow Priest, etc. And I will leave a link to this in the description. But having all 3 of the mobs just right in front of you really makes things a little bit easier. It takes up a lot of screen economy, and I'm just kind of used to looking at the nameplates and the boss's nameplates rather than looking at a Weakaura on my left side for tracking cooldowns. So it's something that you can get used to, but if you can learn to master it, it could be a powerful tool for keeping up all your dots. Alright, now that we know how to utilize multi-dotting, I want to go into external cooldowns. Now, external cooldowns are a hot topic within a raid because I typically believe it's big play over class. If you have a Shadow Priest that's doing more damage than your Warlocks, give them the externals. If you have a Mage, it's cranking, give them the externals. It's just how it goes. On the left side, Power Infusion, Innervate, Focus Magic, and I didn't put down Bloodlust because everybody gets Bloodlust, but I wanted to talk about the ones that only one person can get. These are major differences. Major differences so that when you go into Warcraft logs, they have their own category for externals received. Like Bloodlust Power Infusion, Bloodlust Power Infusion, Bloodlust, 2 Power Infusions, Bloodlust Power Infusion, and then there's Innervates, and PI is shown and Innervate's shown, but Focus Magic does not. Although Focus Magic is a big buff for casters, it's a little 3% crit, which is kind of big considering what upgrades give you in comparison how much crit you need to supplement that 30 minutes of 3% crit. But looking at this, something that we really need to think about is how long a fight is. I'm going to go to my good friend Fear's logs over here, and this is his kill on Algalon. You can see here that he got PI twice during the fight. Now, what does this mean? Typically on pull, PI does not stack with Heroism. So if you get PI and you have the 20% casting speed, it does not stack with Heroism, because Heroism is a larger increase, and that's just how it works. The only thing you gain from PI, if it is done with Heroism, is the mana cost reduction, which sometimes is relevant, but that's another story. But he gets the PI almost immediately after the Heroism, because it is a 5-minute fight. If he's holding the PI for his execute, that he's missing out on 20% casting speed for 15 seconds in the middle of the fight that could be used multiple times. If the fight was even another extra minute, he could have got a third use out of it. So learning how long fights are and knowing how many times you could use an ability, basically like your own, you treat the PI like a personal cooldown, and you call for it when you need it at that moment, and hopefully the other player is paying attention. But it's very important to judge the duration of fights and try to figure out how many times can I use this, because more uptime on the externals is a significant difference when you're looking at your logs and personal damage. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I would love a 15-second Bloodlust for myself in the middle of the fight, so I would use it as much as possible. But moving on from PI to Innervate, someone who uses Innervate very, very well is my good friend Criteria. Criteria is an Innervate monster. He knows when he wants to Innervate and how much mana he needs to end the fight with 0 mana. Dump the resource as much as he can, and you can see here that he got 2 at the exact same time. It's a short fight. It's a 2:30 fight. But he knows there's multiple players with Innervates that probably aren't going to use them, because the Moonkin is geared in this raid and has a solid mana pool, and the Feral is not going to use it on themselves. And you don't really need Innervate on healers for Ignis, because it's not a very healing intensive fight. So he slurps them up, and then you go to his damage done, and he's able to crank as much as he can, because he doesn't need an Evo, he doesn't need a gem, he just blasts as much as he can. And moving on from those, there are graphs floating around out there about Focus Magic and which class gets the most in their BIS, and everybody complains about the list and is like, oh, I deserve it, no, I deserve it, blah blah blah. But just give it to your best player. Typically the mages will just Focus Magic each other, especially if they're fire, because when fire crits they get more Pyroblast, and the forward piece they get free Pyroblast. So typically mages are just going to Focus Magic each other, and that's fine, that's life. But if you have one mage in the raid, just put Focus Magic on your biggest blaster. Boomkins and Shadow Priests are very good targets for Focus Magic because they get a lot of crits, and Warlock dots, so Affliction Warlocks don't typically generate a lot of crit for the mage because the dot crit ticks don't count for the buff. So it's kind of weird, but just give it to your best player and everybody will be happy, because if someone's doing more damage, then their kill times are faster, their parses are better, and everyone's more satisfied. But I want to move on to Tricks and then Holy Frenzy. I think Tricks will 95% of the time be given to Warlocks, and it should be given to Warlocks only 2 times. Your Warlock needs Tricks 2 times the majority of fights. On the pull, for the 15% damage rolling on Corruption, and at 35%. Those are the only 2 times. If they want it on cooldown, they're wrong. Do not do that. At 35%, Warlocks get a talent activation called Shadow's Embrace, or Death's Embrace, sorry, which gives you 12% extra shadow damage. So you just re-roll the Corruption with the big buff, and boom, you have 27% extra damage on your Corruption. There are some fights, like, for example, Iron Council, where you won't be re-upping the Corruption at 35%, because you'll have the Corruption Hopefully you'll have a double rune corruption where it's 100% extra damage, where the 2 runes over the fight overlap each other. Or you'll have just 1 rune and the 50% damage from that will be more than what you get from Tricks of the Trade plus Death's Embrace, so you won't even be putting it up anyway. So most fights, 100%, 35%. That's it. And you should be using this. This is something that should be, because even though it doesn't count in logs, I guess let's go to overall encounters. You can see that Tricks is its own category, but it adds damage, and not a small amount either. This is completely different because he's not using it over the entire raid. He probably just was kind of playing the game and not really paying attention to it, but it's a lot of damage over a raid. Like 500k damage over an entire raid is not an amount that you could just brush off, because there's players that's like a healer just doing damage the entire time, which is good. And when you have more damage on the table, your fights are faster, your damage is better, and you could bypass more mechanics. So definitely get some use of Tricks of the Trade. And if you have a Blood DK, make sure you're using it in Holy Frenzy. I think the best in Holy Frenzy target is a gamer Feral Druid. If you don't have a Feral Druid, then just toss it to your best Death Knight Rogue. I don't really think it works for Hunters, but it might work for Hunters, etc. I haven't really had a lot of experience with Unholy Frenzy because there's not a lot of Death Knights that are playing Pure Blood right now. Most tanks are just prop balance. So that's about it for externals. In summation, use early, use often, and make sure they get used, because some people will just sit on their cooldowns waiting for something to happen. Use your cooldowns early, use your cooldowns often, and you'll see a major difference in how much damage your raid does. If you want an easy tool to track external cooldowns, I would recommend Method Raid Tools. There are numerous Weakauras and other raid tracking cooldowns out there, but we use MRT notes for our stars during Algalon, so it's convenient to have an add-on that can do multiple things. And all you have to do is go down the list, go to Tricks, turn that on. You can go down to Soulstone, turn that on. Innervate, turn that on. And PI, turn that on. Nice and easy, simple. It shows up in a nice, cool little bar on the side. It is very easy to move around, and it looks nice, so pick it up if you want. Thank you for making it this far into the video. If you have any info that I missed out on or you want to share, please drop a comment. It's really appreciated. And if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. It's free, helps a ton. You can always turn it off later. I will be continuing this series with episode 2. What does BIS mean? And I think it's a very interesting topic, and I hope I can see you at the next one. Peace.